For the first time in history, a former president of the U.S. may be indicted for a crime. As Donald Trump announces on social media, he expects to be arrested tomorrow following a grand jury investigation in New York State. Western Mass News reporter Reagan Lockery joins us live in studio after getting answers on the historical implications this has on our nation. Reagan.
Mary, I spoke with John Back, a history professor at Western New England University, who tells me he believes this could be a game changer for Donald Trump's presidential campaign as he tries to rally his followers behind him. Back fears it could potentially lead to chaos.
This is the greatest possible thing for him, and it's an important moment for American justice because a former president has to be held accountable.
Former president and current presidential candidate Donald Trump faces the potential of being indicted, a first in our nation's history, as a grand jury in New York State looks into alleged hush money paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels right before the election in 2016. Western Mass News is getting answers from John Back, a history professor at Western New England University. He says by announcing his imminent arrest on social media, Trump could be trying to help his presidential campaign.
It puts him right back in the spotlight. We're going to be talking about him for the next several days, no matter what happens, because of the historic nature of this.
Now, as New York prepares for reaction to a possible indictment, barricading parts of the city, including the courthouse, Western Mass News wanted to get answers on whether or not the American public should fear a second insurrection.
This is not January 6th. Our democracy is not immediately in danger, but this is someone who believes that he can turn his criminal actions into the recipe for his political success. And I think he's going to get a big bounce in popularity.
Back does believe, however, there is a real threat for violence and chaos.
The possibility of chaos, the possibility of violence, the possibility of online and in-person, beyond mischief, actual and beyond threats, but actual deaths. Yes, I think that there's a very high likelihood of some chaos. All it takes is one person who believes that the former president is being taken as a political hostage. There have already been many death threats against the New York State prosecutor.
Back adds some Trump supporters have actually called on a potential run on banks to destabilize the global economy.
These sorts of things could actually get kind of terrifying because run on a bank doesn't take much to get going.
He adds that if Trump does plead guilty, these charges could potentially go away and he'll be left with a fine rather than jail time. And as New York prepares for potential protests, Professor Back advises people to try to avoid going to the city for the coming days. Reporting in studio, Reagan Lockery for Western Mass News.